So the next session is all about volunteering, which is something that we as an organization actually trade off, because without volunteers we wouldn't really exist. Now, many of you will start charities or already have, and social businesses, and for those you're going to need volunteers. And here to talk to you about his company's philosophy on volunteering is an amazing businessman who, before he talks about volunteering, I think we should talk about him as a young leader. So here is the person who, age 16, entered the Guinness Book of Records as the world's youngest fully qualified lawyer, age 16. Not bad. You guys think you've achieved stuff. At 24, he was the youngest professional, the international who's who of professional management. He's now the CEO of Grupo Modelo, which is part of our strategic partner, AB InBev. And just a call out to the work that they're doing on Together for Safer Roads. So sadly, the largest cause of death amongst young people are road accidents, and they've created a coalition, Together for Safer Roads, to actually address that, and brought many of the world's big companies together to see if they can't actually drive down traffic accidents and road deaths amongst young people. But here, Ricardo is here today to talk about volunteering. So please welcome to the stage a brilliant businessman and young leader, Ricardo Tadeu.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. Hi. Well, my name is Ricardo Tadeu. I'm the CEO of Grupo Modelo, and I'm AB InBev's president for Mexico. I have to say, personally, that's really, really great to be here, to have the opportunity to talk to such an amazing and engaged audience. I really got very impressed with everything that I heard so far. Well, my objective here today is to bring to your attention, with the help of some friends, the case for volunteering. As we at Grupo Modelo really believe that volunteering is one of the most important trends for the future. The way I see it, we are all gathered here to talk about problems, but of course, much more than that, to talk about solutions. Now, I would like every one of you to imagine one thing. Imagine if there was a button, a red button, if you like. And this is not an ordinary button. No. This is a very special button. A button which every time it is pressed, the average quality of life of people around the world would be improved. Nice button, huh? I'm really sure that if that button were to exist, most of the audience here would dedicate a huge amount of time pressing this button. More than that, many great people around the world would perhaps dedicate their entire lives to pressing this button. And then, little by little, children would be fed, would receive education, people would live in better houses. In short, little by little, the world would be a better place. Unfortunately, as we all know too well, there's no such button. The thing is, we all here agree and recognize the problems, such as the refugees case that we just saw. But it's very difficult to agree in the solutions. As we saw, none of the answers got 100% of consensus. That everlasting disagreement in how to improve the welfare of the people is the very origin of what we call politics. Now, you mix all this ambiguity and difficulty to align towards the right solutions with the very human need to seek and maintain power, and things get even more complex. My point here in this introduction is that we all know that the world needs to improve in many aspects. But there is no magic red button. And therefore, it is so hard to make it happen, even when we all got the best of the intentions. So, the question is, for all of us, what should we do? We, who care. And by we, I don't mean only us, gathered here in this great event, but every person in the world, regardless of age, gender, race, or socioeconomic level, who actually cares about how our world is doing. What should we do? Should we recognize that some matters are just too complex and do nothing? Is that what should we do? It's a question. Let's see if I can get 100%. Should we do nothing? No. No? Thank you. I'm not sure if I got 100%. But I believe we could reach a consensus that doing nothing is not an alternative. That's very important to reach that common ground. Now, seriously, what should we do? What really could we do to make a difference in such a complex reality? In Grupo Modelo, we have a very strong belief, a belief that is deeply ingrained in our culture, and that we are really proud to share and engage with others. And I'm talking about bringing people together through volunteering. Our main initiative in that matter is Volontarios Modelo, which is a platform that connects causes and wills, allowing matches between needs and personal interests, which go from reforestation and scrubbing of public parks, cleaning beaches, remodeling of schools and healthcare centers, spending time with children in foster homes, and many other activities. We are very proud to say that in 2014, we reached 500,000 hours of volunteer work. And this year, we are aiming for more than 1 million. Thank you. But there's one thing very important. When at Grupo Modelo we talk about volunteering, we like to address the common person. And what do I mean by common person in such a diverse world? We mean the man or woman who has a job, or studies, or takes care of the house, has a family, or is part of one. Any person who wants to be happy, to have your loved ones happy, and sure enough, who really would like the world to be a better place. But deep inside, feels that it's so complicated to deal with his or her own problems that it's even unthinkable to personally contribute to a better world, especially with the absence of this magic red button that we just mentioned. But today, we are here to say that this perception, this attitude, is not correct. In fact, most honest and hardworking people think and behave as if they had only one out of two options. Either you dedicate your time and your effort making sure you and your family have a decent life, or you devote your life to others or a cause of substantial importance. To put in other words, either you're a saint or a regular person, as if there was nothing in the middle. Our case here is to break this paradigm. Our case here is that we can all do some good and make a difference by volunteering. And to be a volunteer, you don't need to dedicate 100% of your time or your energy. You can choose a cause that is close to your heart and be a volunteer once a week, once a month, once every other month. It's totally flexible, and it's up to you. It's up to us. We adapt the volunteering to our life, and hopefully, we can make a positive habit out of it. I can tell you that it's a great way to connect to your family, to your friends, to meet new people, to feel happier and better about ourselves, and why not? To help others and do our part for a better world. Now, to help me with the case, I'd like to welcome a panel of 3 individuals with really remarkable life experiences and diverse backgrounds, but with a very unique common ground, which is incorporating volunteering in their lives as a win-win proposition. Please, the delegates.
Come on in.
So we have João.
All of them.
Yeah, we can come
Come on, all of
bring
you,
all of
come
them.
on.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Well, Charlotte, Charles, João. Let's start with Charlotte. Charlotte Atkinson's from the UK. Thank you very much for coming. Charlotte has worked with street children in Bolivia, as well as charity in Scotland, focused on children with behavioral problems. She's currently developing a program with Rolls-Royce and the Thai education authorities to promote the English language learning, as well as supporting some development projects in rural Thailand. Back in the UK, Charlotte is an officer in a Royal Signals Army Reserve unit that provides emergency support in times of national crisis. João Rafael Brites is from Portugal. João is co-founder of the Transformers Project, a volunteer program which connects talented mentors in the fields of the arts, sports, and hip-hop to teenagers all across Portugal. He is also a co-creator of the Amazon Summer School program, an intensive summer school which is meant to prepare a generation of sustainable leaders in the Amazon rainforest. João is also a teaching assistant of business and economics in Lisbon. And finally, in the middle, Charles Vidianani from Benin. Charles is the founder and CEO of Forum Initiatives, which is an organization that accompanies youth through activities focused on leadership and entrepreneurship. Charles' goal is to inspire young people to innovate. Forum's 2012 volunteer campaign registered more than 15,000 participants in community projects focused on health, education, human rights, and the environment. Its program has been incorporated by Benin's National Youth Service, registering thousands of volunteers. Charlotte, Charles, João, thank you very much for joining us today. So let me start with applause. Charlotte, you had a great deal of experience dealing with many types of volunteering service. So what drives you to devote your energy, your time to helping others?
I think for me, volunteering is so important in my life because of just the fundamental concept of volunteering itself. In a world that so rarely gives something for nothing, volunteers are incredible because they're giving up their time, their energy for free, and we don't see that very often. And I think that's the driving force behind it. And volunteers are an incredible resource, and what more, we're a renewable resource. We don't have a one-use application, we don't get used up, and I've heard so many stories already from my fellow delegates about some of the incredible volunteering initiatives they've set up and they participate in. And the energy, enthusiasm behind that is what continues to drive me to want to get involved and to give up my time, which is free to me, but it can make a difference in the world.
Oh, thank you. Now, João, I would like to know, I mean, how is that you engage those mentors to work with the teenagers back in your Transformers program in Portugal?
Okay, thank you everybody. So basically the basic premise of our work in Transformers is that people are not indifferent or apathetic in general. So rather the most important reason that explains social disengagement in Portugal, we believe, is the fact that most of the people did not find yet their superpower, their own way to transform the community. So basically, the way we actually recruit our volunteers is by showing that everybody has a superpower and that you can make a difference through what you love to do. We believe that volunteering can be something really sexy, and that most of the volunteering organizations in my country do not explore that sexiness of volunteering. Because helping others can be very sexy, can be something that you can, talk to your friends about. And and then the last thing that we try to promise potential volunteers in the Transformers project is a place where they can be hopeful in a way. There was this guy called Václav Havel that he wrote, so he was the first president of Czech Republic, and at some point he wrote about the distinction between optimism and hope. And he said that for him, optimism is the expectation, given some facts, that things are going to turn out well, while hope is the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. So at Transformers, we do not promise impact because impact is difficult. Dealing with the social issues is very hard. But we can promise a space where people have the certainty that what you're doing makes sense.
Oh, that's good, great. And I think that the sexy parts is actually important because we have to engage and attract people and think the right way of communicating to bring more volunteers. But this is a very good point now to Charles, and I'd like a piece of advice. Because in Mexico, we noticed that through Voluntários Modelo, when we call people and invite them to be part of our initiatives, we normally attract more people from the 30s to 40s. And we really would like to also attract younger people, the millennials, high teens, the 20s. So what would be your advice for us as an organization to try to get to the youth?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. My presence on this stage is pretty unlikely. I started volunteering since my very young age because I lost my mom when I was 8 years old and my dad when I was 14. And I was raised by an orphanage. And I got many people supporting me. I had the courage, I had the enthusiasm to continue education. And I understood that education is the best weapon against poverty. And now I wanted to use my experience, my personal experiences, to inspire and to motivate the young people and the kids all across the country and all across the world that even if you have nobody to support you, you can still become someone in life. So that's where I started from. And volunteerism is a lifelong job for me because I am born to be a volunteer. And I do it every day. I do it every time. I devote at least 60% of my daily work to volunteer, to go and talk to the kids in schools and in high schools and to the young people in universities that somewhere in your life you have someone who contributes to your life, who gives something for you so that you become what you are. So in return, you need to give back. So your giving back comes when you devote yourself, when you commit to a cause, when you understand that your presence on this earth is meaningful, and to prove the world that you are on the earth for a meaningful purpose, you need to reach out to people. You need to volunteer in health, in education, in whatever field. The most important thing that can drive people to volunteer is to let them know that volunteering helps you being part of something big. You understand? Being part of something big and showing the world that you exist.
So it's transmitting that sense of purpose.
Exactly, the sense of purpose and the sense of commitment. So it needs to be explained to people that it is a commitment, that we are born to help each other, that we are born to serve the world, to serve people around us.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, before opening to a couple of questions from audience, I'd like at least one of you to share with us what was the most meaningful moment that you had in your lives through volunteering? I mean, what was the most wonderful experience?
So I can start very quickly. For me, it was what made me become a volunteer. So actually, at age 16, I decided to drop a career in swimming to follow a childhood dream I had of learning how to breakdance. And I was not at all very talented at it. At the point, I was a kid very low on self-esteem. I didn't really think I was really very good at anything. And I learned to dance in the street with friends that volunteered to teach me. 90% of what I know today, I learned from them. And that, for me, was really the moment where I realized how powerful someone else can be in another's life. And that left the legacy in me of trying to do the same thing for other people.
Okay, great story. Thank you.
I get a lot of questions from people daily asking me how to start. I work very intensely and closely at refugee camps in Iraq, Syria, Kurdistan, and just recently came back from Macedonia and Greece. I have made the mistake of bringing along volunteers from Europe with me, with different backgrounds that are not used to this type of work. So my question is, how can we prepare, and what are your views on preparing some sort of program for volunteers and how that could affect their work? So there's a lot of people I've had with me that regret their trips because they go back and they have children, they have families, and they're traumatized by what they've seen. And as we all know, assisting refugees in particular can be very difficult, hearing their stories and their conditions. And also, what has been the most intense memory you guys have had, something very extreme that you've seen that completely changed you, has been overwhelming. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to have a word in terms of the organization. I think that today, corporations and the technology can help a lot on that. Of course, there are many different levels of volunteering, and we really believe that volunteering is for everyone. I mean, of course, we have people with deeper commitment to certain causes, and people that simply can't dedicate too much time to that. But we just know that being closer to the problems is something that makes everyone more solidary and participant of the world's problems. So what we do at Grupo Modelo, we really try to select the organizations, some third-party non-governmental organizations, and we select them by the professionalism of how they work, how they organize their work, how they organize their volunteers. And then we work as a portal, and we register any Mexican who would like to participate in any given cause, and then we send them to these organizations and we finance these activities. So we try to organize and make sure that the volunteering experience is a good experience, because if you do something, but you don't get a good experience out of it, it might be the last time you have it. So it's a very important thing. And for us, as part of this movement of making a much more habit of people and not just a niche, we really want to make volunteering a great experience for everyone. Now, in terms of if you have anything else to add on.
I think for me, going to your last question about the most difficult experience I've had personally, it was when I was working in Bolivia. There was a 7-year-old boy that I was trying to persuade to come back to the home. His name was Agustin, and he wouldn't come back. And I spent several hours trying to persuade him to come back, and at the end, he decided that he didn't want to, despite me trying to persuade him that he'd be safe there and looked after there. And that was really, really traumatizing for me because I never saw him again. I don't know what happened to him. And I think there are so many times when it's really difficult because going back to something that was said earlier on today, you feel like you are just a tiny drop in the ocean and you feel like you're making absolutely no difference whatsoever. Maybe you are, maybe you're not to different people's lives, but I think one of the most important things for volunteers to know and to be able to see in an organization is that even if they don't make a difference, and even if they can't see the difference, it still matters that they're still trying. And I think that's the important thing in organizations to convey to everyone who gives their time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello. Number 2. Let's go 2, oh, sorry. 2, 1, 4.
I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate and ask a bad question. I work in primarily health and mental health, and a lot of the youth that volunteer with us feel like we saved their life, and so they'll do anything for us. It doesn't mean we should ask. I've seen a lot of really great organizations end up exploiting their volunteers. So how can we ensure that that balance is there? And to give a quick example, I had a young person who was so determined to come and help out an event that he put himself in financial jeopardy to be there because that was the only way he felt like he could contribute. So how can we ensure that we're balancing it and that we're not, when we're asking people to volunteer, we're not exploiting them?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, but in every activity that we engage, I believe that there are correct ways of doing it and wrong ways of doing it. I think it's a matter of ethics for every organization. If the principle of the organization is to improve the world and do good, of course, that should start with the mental state or the physical state of their own volunteers. Every time we try to engage into a volunteer activity, we make sure that we have people organizing the activities, we have security guaranteed to our volunteers, and this is the responsibility of the organizations that want to promote the volunteering in a way that we can increase the number of volunteers. That has a lot to do with sometimes, and in the past, in our first experience inviting many people to engage with us, we had in some moments more response that we were prepared to attend in some cases. And talking to people after that experience, some people mentioned, look, it was very nice coming here and be part of that effort, but I don't feel that I was prepared enough to do what I was supposed to do or something. So guaranteeing that we have the right organization, that we make sure that the volunteers engage the proper amount of time and they know what they are going to do and what they're going to invest in terms of time, it's very important to make sure that this will become a good experience and then more people will engage in it.
Okay, we're going to go here, Ricardo, to number 4, and then 1, and if there's time, we'll go to 2, okay? Yeah? So if you go over there first.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. My
Then
name is
here, for spotlights, then here, okay?
Okay, hi, good morning, or afternoon, I think it is now. My name is Shamel Rice from Barbados, and so far it's been really good to be here. I do have a question, though, as it relates to volunteering. One, I don't find that in Barbados we really have a culture where people are big on volunteering, and that's one of the biggest issues that I think the civil society organizations in Barbados we face, because many of us are strapped for funds, but when you want to have persons to really be devoted to projects, it's very difficult to often have the consistency. So my first question is, how can you really create a sustainable long-term culture for a country where that's not big, that people think it makes sense and they would want to give their time? My second question is, for me particularly, I run an organization where I work with female sex workers. And for us, then, confidentiality is big. So how then, for myself, if I'm working with such a sensitive group where you're not just talking about prostitution, but then there are issues of trafficking and all these other things that get involved, how am I able to get persons who can be consistent but committed to something so intense long term, so that then it makes sense and it's good for us as well without putting in jeopardy what we do. I think it's easier to get a group of persons to come together if we want to build a house or to dig a well. You can just get them and it's fine. But when you're talking about lives, when you're talking about all of those other things, it could be difficult. So if you can weigh in on that, I'd be most grateful.
You're totally right. I guess that there are two ways of seeing it. The first way is that we should have more people volunteering. And not everyone is willing to believe that they want to dedicate their lives into doing good for others. I mean, most of people in the world think that, if you're up to doing this, you are a saint, you are like, I admire you a lot, but it's not, my life. I have my family, I have my concerns, I have things that I have to take care about on my own. I have enough problems already. What we really try to do is make sure that more and more people, even the ones that have big problems in their personal lives, they can dedicate a part of their lives into helping others in a way. And I think that it's something that you start from the beginning. You say, look, I can volunteer. It could be once every month. It's fine. Yes, it is. We can find something for you to do. So our idea is really to make that much more spread and not necessarily so engaged, but something that becomes more of a habit in our society than necessarily just a niche kind of thing, right? When you talk about doing something that is, let's say, deeper, that is really engaging a large amount of time in a very difficult problem, I believe that is something that it's what Charles mentioned to us, really trying to define the purpose. Finding people that first are really wanting and committed to that task and making sure that what they're doing is connected to a purpose that make their lives more meaningful. I think this is the...
If you make your question very quick, we can have one final question from over here. You've been very patient.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lima. I'm from Guyana. And coming from a developing country, a lot of the social actions are implemented in poor communities. And we find for the success of these projects, we need the individuals who are working in this community to give their time somehow. So my question is, how is it do you recruit volunteers when the potential pool of volunteers, the economic instability that many face, they do not think they have the economic resources or the time because they might be holding 2 or 3 jobs to actually volunteer. Because the perception in Guyana is that to volunteer, you have to be rich. How do you get those persons who are living below the minimum wage to come out and work in those communities?
I think that's a great question, and this is the part where the organizations, the big organizations come in. So we are part of a large company, and influenced by Dave Jones, who talks too much about who cares wins, and understanding that we have to contribute more than just by doing our products. We created that Volontarios Modelo platform, and with that platform, we can finance at least the tools, everything which is needed for people that only have to dedicate their time to go there and participate. And from our own experience, we could see that in some cases, even people with a lower socioeconomic level, they engage a lot into volunteer because we do things within their own communities. And so they see very clearly the benefits, and they know, well, since you're bringing me all that to help me do what I need to do, I can be part of it. So I think that the companies, and one thing that we really dream for Mexico is to have, of course, not only Grupo Modelo working on that volunteering platforms, but also to have other important companies in Mexico be part of a chain of organizations that will drive Mexico to be a more solidary country and one with a very high participation of people into volunteering activities. Okay.
Fantastic. Ricardo, thank you so much for an amazing session.
Thank you.
Wow, Charlotte, Charles.